Can everyone hear me? Okay. Welcome. Great to see such a large audience in person. I know we're also streaming online. Hello to all of you, and thank you for braving the unpredictable April Fool's weather that we're having here today. Who knows what it'll be when we're done here. So thank you all for coming. I also wanted to make sure to thank those that made this event possible. Thank you very much to Stacy Hahn. She's outside making sure everyone's getting in the door here. To the President's office and the staff there for helping out. A special thanks to the committee, the Douglas Moore Committee that reviewed in a pretty difficult process with a lot of wonderful qualified individuals who have applied. And thank you to all of our assistants. We have our microphones and our lights and all of the technical skills here that most of us don't have those skills, so very happy to have them on board to troubleshoot for us. And thanks as well to the catering staff that's going to be providing some refreshments for us after this event. So just a kind of a brief rundown of how things are going to go this evening. In a moment, you're going to hear from President Inch, which will tell you a little bit about this, and our speaker this evening. And then our speaker will come up. We'll have a chance to do some question and answers. You'll notice there are 2 microphones at the front of the stage. We would just ask that during that time you make your way to the front of the stage to those microphones to ask your questions. And then after that, we'll hear again from President Inch about who the 2026 winner of the Douglas R. Moore is. And then after that, that kind of concludes this portion. There'll be refreshments, but also Mika will invite folks to follow her down to the gallery where you'll get to see some of her amazing work here. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome President Edward Inch to the stage. Yeah, I hope so.
Well, thank you. And welcome to the 51st Annual Douglas R. Moore Faculty Research Lecture. If you look at the back of your program, there's a long list of 50 speakers there, but you just look at the wide range of work that this campus produces and the number of people from the number of departments and disciplines represented. I think it really is a good showcase of the excellence that our faculty engage in the work that they do, and that then is imparted to what our students get to learn about, what our students get to engage in, and in many cases inspires our students on research. I have this wonderful privilege in my job that I get to call the selectee each year so that they will be presenting a year from then, right? So I've called Mika about a year ago and let her know that she was going to have this opportunity and talked a little bit about her work, and it was wonderful. And we had a good conversation, and a year ago, before anyone knew she was selected, she was sitting somewhere out there in the audience. And so tonight, you will learn who the next speaker is for next year, who's sitting somewhere out there in the audience. You can try to guess after you've paid attention to this presentation, because I've been looking forward to this. I come from an arts background. I was a dean of arts for a long time, and I think this presentation should be really fascinating and get at the heart of what a lot of what we do on campus is. The Douglas R. Moore Faculty Research Lectureship Award honors a faculty member who's engaged in an activity that demonstrates the quality and the excellence and the passion in discovery that provides a venue for sharing that knowledge and in a manner that enriches the intellectual life of our university community. So all of us sitting here, all of those on the digital airwaves, I think this will be really something special. So tonight, I'm very pleased to introduce the recipient of the 2025 Faculty Research Award, Professor Mika Laidlaw, from the Department of Creative Arts. This presentation focuses on her role as an immigration artist and educator living in the current very complex world. It's very timely. So please join me in welcoming Mika Laidlaw, her presentation titled An Immigrant by Choice, What is My Role as an Artist and an Educator?
Hello, can you hear me okay? All right, thank you, Peter, and thank you, President Inch. I want to thank President Inch and the staff of the Office of the President and the Douglas Moore Committee. They've been working for a long time to make this lectureship happen, and it's my true honor to be here today. And I also want to thank administration, provost, deans, and my colleagues, friends, family, students. Thank you so much for being here today. Your support means a lot to me. My name is Mika Leitao. I teach ceramics in the Department of Creative Arts. My title today is an immigrant by choice. What is my role as an artist and educator? I will show you many, many images and tell you the stories about places I live, people I met, and how they inspire me to make work in ceramics. And I'll tell you how I make them, show you some slides, as well as my students' work to showcase how fantastic our students at the MSU are. And by the end of the presentation, hopefully, my question on what is my role as an artist and educator makes some sense to you. I'll take questions and comments when I'm all done. So I like everything about clay. I like the smell of it. I like the taste of it, how it looks, how it feels, what kind of sound it makes. I know I'm a little bit biased, but I think clay has superpower. When the world is chaotic and it's difficult to focus what's in front of you, at least when you're touching clay, clay has the ability to make you feel okay. I've been doing this for 35 years, and it works every time. So if you give me food, water, and a lump of clay, I am good to go. I take my time on things I care about. It took me many, many years to learn English as a second language. And here in these pictures, I am taking my time learning how to make clay. First, I dig dirt from ground, and I'm mixing dirt with water, then sieve it to remove twigs and pebbles and whatnot. I think there's a difference between learning by books and learning from your own experience. It took me countless hours of physical labor for me to understand the medium I work with come from ground. Just like that, it took me many, many years to build awareness on what it means to live in this country as an immigrant. I am an immigrant by choice, meaning nobody forced me to come here. It was all by my own will. To this date, everyone in my family, extended family, old friends, all live in Japan. I lived about 20 years in Japan and 33 years in the States so far, and I feel lucky and grateful that I have an option to live in this country as an immigrant. Because it's privileged to have that option, I've been contemplating on how my roles fit into this complex world. So the first, my role as an artist, I want to share with you a bit about my home, Japan. Japan is about the size of California. I want you to imagine take 40% of the US population and squeeze them all into the state of California. That's how dense Japan is. Tokyo has 14 million people. My hometown, Kobe, is not quite as big, but still have 1.5 million people. My daughter and I watched a beautiful sunrise with thousands of people at the Suma Beach in Kobe. At Kyoto Monkey Park, there are far more people than monkeys. But there are some quieter choices. Miyajima is outside of Hiroshima. Gokayama is known for handcrafted paper. Aoike Lake has one of the most mesmerizing colors. And because Japan sits right on the Ring of Fire, there are many wonderful hot springs. Karatsu Castle sits on the coast of Kyushu. And this is a small shrine nearby my parents' home. I can assure you, you will not be hungry in Japan. I've traveled many, many places in the world, but I am almost certain Japan might offer the most food choices everywhere you go. The progress in transportation is amazing. It used to take 2 weeks by foot to go from Tokyo to Kyoto. Now it only takes 2 hours and 18 minutes by bullet train. So growing up in Japan, I had extremely secure childhood. People around me led modest lives, and I was surrounded by loving and responsible adults. I come from a family of 4, my father, my mother, my younger brother Tomo, and myself. Here's me with my grandmother. I'm only 5'3", so she was a tiny lady, full of spirit. So I believe things like compassion and empathy is not something you logically understand, but rather you learn from skin. So growing up in Japan, I often visited my grandparents in the countryside, and my grandma would treat me like a princess. And she would put layers of futon for me to sleep on. So everything you see here is clay, and each clay pillow symbolizes unconditional love that's passed from one generation to the next. I remember chilly mornings, she would cover me from behind with blanket or jacket, and I felt pampered and safe. So here's me with my softball teammates. When I was 15 or 16, I felt I was average at everything. And I always admired people who excels at something. So here's my mid-teen crisis feeling, oh, I feel so ordinary. My mom and I were in love with Harrison Ford around that time. And I dreamed of being a movie subtitle translator. So I begged and begged, and I became a high school exchange student. I lived 1 month in California and 10 months in Florida. So that time was 1988. I arrived at the land of Def Leppard t-shirts and big hair mean cheerleaders. My high school was huge, with 2,500 students, and I remember seeing from the whole A all the way to whole H, and I only knew how to say, hi, my name is Mika. I was completely lost. So my dream of being surrounded by American high school students asking me all kinds of questions about Japan quickly shattered. Nobody cared I was there. So 16-year-old me thought and decided I'll talk to one stranger a day. Because I had zero understanding on social structure of American high school, I talked to just about anyone I could find. Hi, my name's Mika. I'm an exchange student from Japan. May I speak to you? The odds of making friends this way was really low. Most people would quietly, politely step away and say, oh, good for you. But every once in a while, there are kind and patient people were willing to slow down and listen to me. So I kept at it. I spent 2 years at Casper College, Wyoming, and transferred to Edwardsville, Illinois. Spent 6 years in Kansas, and I found my home in Mankato, Minnesota. There were many, many rejections and heartbreaks, but also met spectacular people. I make these porcelain hands thinking about the kindness of those people. This work titled Waves is about hundreds of people who helped me along the way. When I was done with college in America, I realized I didn't know much about ceramics in my own country. So I went back to Japan and apprenticed under Mr. Masayo Imanishi at Akishino Pottery. Mr. Imanishi taught me a lot about working as a professional. Akishino Pottery is in Nara City, and it was an excellent place to learn traditional arts. I learned everything from making clay, making pots, firing pots, and I lived, breathed clay day and night. This is kind of the work I repeated hundreds of times. During apprenticeship, my apartment was just a little bit bigger than the size of my futon. I worked 6 days a week, and there was no pay. So 3 years of apprenticeship taught me what I wanted and what I didn't want in my life. I desperately wanted to work as a professional in the field of ceramics, and I did not want to do this off to the side. After apprenticeship, I attended grad school at Kansas State University. At K-State, I had a wonderful mentor and a group of peers. Fascinating thing about my mentor, Yoshikeda, is that he seemed at ease on his teaching and art making. It was as if beautiful work were just effortlessly born out of his hands. He taught us a lot of things. He taught us it's okay to pour our hearts into what we care about. What we do matters. During the grad school, I did a lot of drawings and black and white photography. And from these, I made these works. These are based on human body. I see human body as a beauty that changes with every moment. Now I want to show you how getting married and becoming a parent influenced my work. This is my most favorite person in the whole world. My husband Les is an outstanding potter, and here are his sculptures and his teapots. So Les and I are opposites. Like many couples, Les's philosophy for life is too short not to try everything. And mine is life is too short not to focus on one thing. And I think they're both good ways to pursue joyful life. Les has like 157 hobbies. Ice fishing being one of them. In 2017, he won a truck by catching the biggest fish out of 10,000 people at the Brainerd, Minnesota for the ice fishing contest. He sold that truck to fund his dream project, which is to build a full-passenger airplane called Cozy from scratch. He used styrofoam and fiberglass, and 5 years of sweat and tears to build this. Now he flies to Idaho to see his mom. So after meeting Les, I made this work titled Bridge. It's a two people merging into one form. So I'm lucky to have Les, who has a full grasp of my development as an artist. So when I make new work, I make a point to get his feedback, to find out what's important and what's not important to my new work. Les and I have 2 kids. I was already a happy person before becoming a parent, but what I didn't know is the range and the depth of emotion that came with being a parent. This is one of the pregnancy-inspired work before the firing. After the firing, I titled them Endurance because it felt like a game of endurance toward the end of pregnancies. When I was young, I used to think everything that comes outside of art making is a distraction. Now I feel differently. What I used to think as distraction is what makes me stronger as an artist. On a side note, as the immigrant mom, immigrant parent, with a huge help from my parents and Japanese public school system, we were able to send our kids to Japanese elementary school for 6 years, every summer for a month. And my kids attended Suganodai Elementary School, which is the school I attended 40-some years ago. And I'm really grateful our kids grew up feeling proud of being half Japanese. I think a lot about the people who came before my time. I come from the long chain of people who deeply cared about what they did and what they left behind. When I'm focused in the studio, I feel close to them. Here are 5 generations of women in my family, and it blows my mind. If I were born 50 years too early, I didn't have choice on where I live, who I'm married to, and what job I hold. So thinking about them, I made this work. The ceramic bomb vessel is the symbol of people from the past, and the plants and the flowers are the ones who are alive. I'm sending my gratitudes to the people who came before my time. And here's how I make them. First, I buy a set of human skeletons, not the real stuff, but the PVC version of it, and make plaster molds out of each bone parts. I assemble the plaster molds, fill it with slip, which is the clay liquid version of the clay. Let it sit for 10 minutes, pour it out, crack open the molds, and the results are thin shell of clay bones. I assemble them into forms. This is before the firing. After the firing, and I will show you a bit about and talk a bit about my newer work. This is the view of CSU Gallery. Please join me right after the talk. I know many of you visited already, but it's just a downstairs from here. I initially started this series to work on my weakness as an artist, which are bright colors, heavy textures, and objects that sits on the wall. And gradually, some of the work morphed into the work about my father. My father is the son of a chiropractor, and as a young man, he wanted to be a painter. So when he shared his aspiration with his dad, it was shut down by words, "Man must get a real job." So he gave up on his dreams. He put on a suit and commuted 2 hours to and from his office for 40 years to support his wife and children. Because he gave up on his dreams, he's always been supportive of my brother and I with his emotional and financial support. My brother became an occupational therapist, and I was able to pursue art. In his work titled Support, the one on the bottom is elevating and lifting, allowing the form on top to relax and thrive. He's one of the most optimistic people I ever met. He had his fair share of hardship, but his takeaway from all those life events were consistently filtered through his optimism. My parents think Mankato, Minnesota is one of the best places to live on earth. They came here about 8 times, about a month at a time. So I made this work titled Joy, thinking about my dad, being playful, having a great time, and being a goofball. When he was in his 70s, he said he was having the best time of his life. Now he's 87, and he's not doing too well. He had many strokes, and he stays in a hospital in Japan. And it shakes your ground to watch your parents becoming smaller and more fragile, and wondering about what goes through his brain while he spends so many days in a hospital bed. I made this work titled Planting Memories. I want to believe his brain is packed with his favorite memories. And at the same time, I realized this is also my brain planting shared memories with him. Memories such as this one. I want to show you a bit more about the backstage of how I make them. This is my home studio. My husband Les does everything from electrics to plumbing to drywall, floor. Thank you, Les. So this is my happy place. Whenever I have new ideas, I jot it down on the Post-its and I paste it everywhere on the wall. I do a lot of drawings to get inspired. Many maquettes. Maquettes are small models to be enlarged to become a larger sculptures. I make maquettes to sort out good ideas and bad ones. The process is really simple. Here I'm rolling small ball of clay, pinching them, and planting them one by one. I don't use a lot of tools, just my hands kind of pinching and rolling and poking at the clay. Art making is sometimes misunderstood as escapism. I think there's more to it. Clay allows me to get in touch with my most honest feelings, and I'm processing the world around me by making forms with clay. When the work is done, they're let dry for weeks, and then I stick them into the kiln. Out of the kiln, sometimes spray some colors. This case, it's a pink underglaze. Then I do tons of glaze testing. I have boxes of textiles and files of glaze notes. I'm not a quick learner. I'm not efficient, but I've been consistently diligent. Here's me brushing some glaze. Glaze is different than paint. I have to imagine heat and gravity. Heat and gravity. What happens to the glaze when it meets 2,000-degree heat and shifts downwards with a gravity? So this is the work before and after the firing. So when the work is completely done, what do? I pack them and ship them. Here are some of the places I showed my work in the past. I think it's really exciting. I don't get to go to Guam, but my clay babies get to go to Guam and meet audience. And many of these places are museums and galleries. And more recently, I'm more interested in showing my work in a public space outside of the art community, such as airports and public libraries and clinic. I was flattered when Dr. John Hallberg, known as Dr. John from NPR, reached out to me to show my work at his waiting room of the clinic. I've done 188 exhibitions and 24 public lectures just like this one. These are just kind of examples of how I try to connect to the audience as an immigrant artist. Now my role as educator, I joined Mankato, Minnesota State, 2003. And as I joined the group, I was lucky. I had fantastic mentors like Professor Jim Johnson, Brian Frank, and Gina Wenger. I think it takes a village to raise a faculty member. And I was certainly nurtured by MSU for the last 22 years. This is how our department looked like now. DOCA, the Department of Creative Arts. We are a bunch of creatives. Some of us are creative writers. We have art historians, film studies, art educator, graphic designers, and studio artists. I have a lot of affection and respect to these people. Students have endless opportunities to attend, such as Good Thunder Reading Series. Social night, we had film talk by one of our film faculty members, and many, many gallery openings. Our students are very active, showing their work often on campus all year round. Here's our annual pizza party, where people bring t-shirts to be printed and share food. And we always appreciate Chris and Chip making their time out of their crazy busy schedule to join us. Swap meet is where people donate the materials they don't use anymore, and people take the material to create new work. We attend conferences and hear students happily casting their hands. My immediate colleague is Todd Schenefeld in the ceramics area, and this is Todd's work. Todd joined MSU at 2002, and I joined at 2003. So together we've been working really hard to build the classroom that is welcoming and safe for students. If anybody knows Todd and Becca Schenefeld, you know they're one of the most kind and generous people you ever meet. I am grateful Schenefeld kids and our kids grew up together. This is our beloved ceramics classroom. A lot of people came and went from here. So please join us by taking a class. You don't have to know anything about clay. Todd and I will walk you through step by step. And here are some of the sections. The rest of the presentation here is about our students. And this is just a fraction of fantastic people we worked with. And students, sorry if your picture is not here. I forgot to take your photos. So I have students' name and the year they graduated and where they went after leaving MSU. And each one of them have long list of accomplishments and different places they moved to, but I don't have enough space to put all that information. Sarah went to Mendocino. Carmen went to Florida, And so as Andy went to South Florida, and we have many, many MSU clay couples and babies as we flip through. Jason is a potter in Wisconsin, and he's a world champion for the beard and mustache contest. World. That's something. Brandon teaches up in the cities. Art went to RISD. Casey went to Illinois, and he teaches at one of the Minsky system. John went to Taiwan, and he worked as a potter in Japan. Matt went to Taiwan, and now he teaches in Taipei. This picture is from just a couple months back. My daughter and I went to visit Matt in Taiwan. I'm really grateful. I'm still connected to many of the past students, many, many years after they graduate. Chad went to Arizona State, and he taught at Puget Sound. Tom went to Dartmouth. Matt went to the Ohio State. Colin went to Cincinnati. Now he teaches at the University of Cincinnati. Steph works as a professional flower arranger. The slide on the right is a collaboration between Steph and I. Shane is an active painter potter based in Twin Cities. Brock went to Milwaukee. Dennis went to Miami. Ashton works as design specialist. Dustin works as a director at Mankato Makerspace. Many of our graduates are taking leadership in art communities, art centers, galleries, and museums. Violet went to West Virginia. Josh went to Alfred, and now he teaches at Illinois, Parkland College, Illinois. So our graduate moved on to earn MFA degree, which is a terminal degree for the visual arts. And then many of them became educators themselves at higher ed. Hannah went to Georgia State, and she taught at Middle Georgia State. Liz went to Carbondale. Dylan went to Arizona State. Lori teaches at Mankato East High School. So we work with a large group of people who work with Dr. Gina Wenger in art education. And our graduates are art teachers in K-12, everywhere in the States and beyond the state of Minnesota. And it really warms my heart. Lori, who used to be our student, is now teaching at the Mankato East High School, and my son Kai respects Lori as a teacher. Harris went to UC Boulder. Selena works at Carnegie Arts Center. We have many faculty members and staff from MSU. So here's Susan, who teaches anthropology. Susan happily glazing her pot. Christy teaches psychology. Christy made all these work in the intro to the pottery class. Sachi teaches communication. Her expertise is a nonverbal communication. So one day I was showing Sachi how to knead clay, and I handed the piece of clay to her, and she said there was a lot of tactile communication by touching a piece of clay. I was moved when she said that. Chivita earned VFA with us. Now she works at the Accessibility Resources. Tyler works as special education teacher. So there are many students who are non-art people who are taking our classes as electives, as art minors, and we have anybody from dental hygiene, aviation, chemistry, biology, construction management, psychology, English majors, and many of them spend a lot of time in our studio, and it's great to have them. Here are more recent graduates. Sean graduated 23. Michael graduated 2024. Margaret earned her MA last year. Here are our current students who are working toward the degree. Mike working toward BFA. Caden, strong painter to begin with, and he started to produce many ceramic work. Hannah is working toward her MA degree. And Riley is starting his MFA study starting this fall semester. Like I said, these are just a fraction of fantastic students we have. And many of these people and many, many others has special place in my heart. My life is richer because I met them. And I'm really excited for each one of them forging their own path to pursue their passion after leaving MSU. So here are last couple slides. As I was preparing for this lecture, I was thinking a lot about fellow immigrants and international students. I wish them well. I hope they're safe. I understand the challenge of being so far away from home, especially the time like this. The poster right here shows MSU ranks really high nationally for the number of international students we accommodate, especially the master's program. Roughly about 1 in 9 people are from outside of the United States. That is a big deal. You all met them. Some of the international students are very vocal, but many of them keep quiet. It's because it's difficult to speak up as a foreign individual. When you first come to the US, you're often dismissed and ignored, and sometimes treated with hostility. Learning a new language, acclimating to the environment, and finding your own voice takes enormous time and effort. As I contemplate on my role, I want to show myself as a fully engaged artist and educator who is not afraid to share stories with people who don't look like or sound like me. So what is my role? My role is to continue sharing my stories. I tell my stories using clay and words. One of my past students once told me, "Mika, you're the only foreign friend I have." And I thought, I wonder how many other Americans are just like him. If my storytelling ended up with making somebody who never had a foreign friend feeling just a little bit more comfortable or just a tiny bit connected to us, I will be extremely grateful. I know it's not enough for some people, but I pledge to keep at it. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you. I'm going to turn the mics on. So please come up to these 2 spots. Any questions, comments you want to share? Come on up. I'm going gonna start pointing names.
Well, thank you so much for the lecture. It's an honor to be in one of the pictures I was not expecting. But so when you talked about, you showed that picture, kind of the memory of your grandmother, kind of putting the futon and pillows to kind of welcome you, and I was really touched by that image and how amazingly tactile that visual image is. Like I could feel the softness, but it's clay, it's ceramics. You know, it's hard if you touch it, but it looks so soft. And I was curious if you could tell us a little bit about the process you go through from the memory of your grandmother and your childhood, you know, that this tactile memory you have in your body, and then how you translate that through your hands, you know, touching clay, and then into a certain shape and the form, and then you go through all the firing and glazing, you know, like how, just tell us a little bit about that process of how you translate.
How my grandmother sort of filters through my body and vision and translate into the clay work. Is it kind of
Yes.
what we were talking about?
Sure.
Sort of abstract, but I'm glad you mentioned it, because my grandmother, as many of you know, is sort of the starting point of everything about my art making. She was very playful. She's like a master of play. So we Japanese, we take ofuro, the bath together, communal thing. So between grandmother and I, we're in a small tub together. Take one towel, small towel, and she would entertain me for 45 minutes, making bubbles and whatnot. So that I think how her memory and experience with my grandma translates into my work is that play with hands. She did so much with hands. Hands are amazing, right? Like I said, I don't use heavy machineries or nothing complicated. But hands are so delicate, so strong, and translate a lot of things of what you're thinking, how angry you are. One of the students in the gallery the other day was talking about, like, when she's hungry, she's angry, she'll punch the clay. It's just like, I totally get that. So that hands translates the emotional quality. So for me, how my grandmother lives in my work is the sense of play and the warmth. Like how warm she made me feel day in, day out. And little things like taking a bath or taking a walk. So all those things are like in just about everything I touch, I think. Yeah. It's a very abstract answer to the abstract question, but I hope that's all right.
So you've said a lot tonight about what it means to be an immigrant, both from your own experience and through your art and your family and your journeys. And you've hinted at things about our country on both sides of this conversation, ways in which you didn't feel welcomed, ways in which you were welcomed and cared for. And just because of the time we live in, we're at such a critical crossroads. I'd really like to hear you say a little bit more about how you would suggest taking that experience you've had and the conversations we all need to have into the moment in time we're at about what it means to be an immigrant.
Yeah, I was talking to a lot of people, and the faculty members, we have international students in the classroom, yeah. And then how oftentimes, it's difficult for us to make them speak up. It's a level of comfort, discomfort, being kind of self-conscious about having the accent as well. So for instance, the accent, how accommodate people's accents. I used to be pretty uncomfortable with my own accent, and as soon as I embrace it, this is not something I should be ashamed of, but it tells about my history, my heritage, so like, embrace it. And that works a lot. And then on the other hand, I met a student, international student, whose accent was made fun of in front of the whole group of people in the classroom, and she had to leave the class to join my class, and it was appalling. We dealt with it, but it just doesn't cut it. So I know it's just a personal level, and because I have the first-hand experience, I don't want to speak for anything that I don't have the first-hand experience. But because I have a first-hand experience as an international student, it's easier for me to help that situation. And I think for current situation, I don't want to go in too much into politics because it goes way over the time. I know my strength and weakness. Here I am living in the United States more than 30 years. I know I am just one of the 340 million people. But I want to ease the fear of people who are scared of us. I'm not scary. Why am I scary? I'm just 5'3", right? It's like I'm not very strong, physically strong. But it takes kind of baby step. People simply don't have friends who don't look like or sound like them. So I am making the mini efforts day in, day out to ease the fear of those people. I know it's not right on the answer to your question, but that's all I can say in a very limited time. Yeah. Thank you for your question. Anybody else coming up? We got a few more minutes.
I'll ask one. You mentioned in your latest work kind of trying to address some of your weaknesses in your art. What are the things that come so easily for you in your art?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good question. So are you aware of it? Like those of you who are artists, what is your strength? What's your weakness? I have to think hard about it. It's like you know yourself so little. I'm 53, I'm finally learning about what I'm good at, what I'm bad at. I am pretty good at repetition. I'm a creature of habit, and I am extremely comfortable repeating some ideas. If I don't catch myself, if Les doesn't tell me, oh, you've done it before, I am comfortably repeating same idea over and over and over again. So I'm, in some ways, good at repetition. I am very good at organic forms. I'm horrible at straight lines and planes. I am good at something that looks soft and inviting. Therefore, when I got the opinion comments on a downstairs in a gallery space, I talked to 4 or 5 different classrooms, and they had awesome questions. So that made me think about next work. But there are quite a few comments about how my work looked toxic and poisonous. I was so happy to hear it, because that's like the opposite of what I'm good at. I'm so welcoming and soft and comfortable. Poisonous, like, yes. So that was refreshing. But yeah, I think that's one thing every artist, it's a really great question. What are you good at? What are you not good at? Thanks for asking. Yeah. Next question, coming up.
If suddenly you found out that you could never make art again, do you have any idea what you would do instead?
Yeah, I thought about it. It must be being in the 50s, understanding. Watching my dad, it's just really, it changes your view. It's like, yeah, things gonna come to the end. Mm-hmm. and sense of mortality changes in the 50s. So I know what I want to do. I'm so glad you asked. If I cannot, so I sometimes have a nightmare at night. I'm missing hands. I am crying, like bawling my ass out, and wake up. It's like, phew, I have my hands. So if I can no longer work with my hands, I know I'll be pretty excited and very content to study Buddhism. Yeah, so that's my comfort thing, is that I grew up with grandma and grandma practicing Buddhism, and there's just so many interesting philosophy. Buddhism as not so much as religion, because I don't believe in all that extra things, reincarnations and whatnot, but they have a lot of great philosophies on here on this earth, how we live. So I would be totally happy. Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be shaving my head, but temples. I will stay in a temple and study Buddhism. Thanks for that interesting question. Young people, come on up. We have some high school students. Many of my past students are here. It's so great to see you. Many of you driving from long distance. Yep.
We talked about your strengths just a bit ago. I was kind of wondering about your current exhibition, how you attacked some of your weaknesses. I was wondering how you feel about those artworks now, like the wall art or the textures and the colors.
Thanks for asking. So the new work is a difficult one because I still haven't digested yet. So every time I bring in a group of people to the gallery, I ask them questions. Well, I have a huge note from those people's questions that leads me to the next work. So I'm still in the process of digesting what went well, what didn't go well. So far, they're not refined because I'm new to bright colors, heavy textures, things that fits on the wall. But I am very, very excited to get that started. I'm not bored. I have not been bored since 17 when I took my first ceramic class in Plant City, Florida, because I didn't speak English and I could do PE and art really well. That was the starting point. I took the one high school class in Florida. But moving ahead, how do I feel about the new work? Uncertain and excited. I'm gonna make more of the bright color one. Toxic is great. There are some great comments from a lot of classrooms. Prehistoric, like they look like they're from way back when, ago. That's awesome comments. And yeah, I have a long list of things that I'm gonna work on. And right now I'm working on, in my home studio, making some new drawings and maquettes for the next round of work. Thanks for asking. Should we take one last question? We're pushing 8 o'clock right now. Are there anybody who has questions? I think I should have passed the mic to President. Do you want the podium or?
No, Mike.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, that was fantastic. Another recognition, please. That's what I meant to say at the top when I began, is something that when you have amazing scholars doing their work that they're passionate about, they infect our students with a drive and a passion and a desire to do something as good or better, and that's how we progress. That's how we progress through our arts or any of the other disciplines we study. And that was just thoroughly incredible, and I appreciate the passion you bring to it and the thoughtfulness and the empathy that it takes to be able to do the art that you do. So thank you very much for sharing. Tonight, I'm pleased to announce the 2026 Douglas R. Moore Faculty Research Lectureship Award is presented to Dr. Beth Heidelberg in the Department of Economics, Ethnic Studies, and Government. If you would please stand. There you are, right behind me. I got to call her a few weeks ago and talk about her presentation that she will present next year in the spring of 2026 in the meeting of our campus community. The lecture is entitled Ghosts Among Us, Local Government Support for Dark Tourism in the United States, United Kingdom. That also should be fantastic. It's an area of personal interest. It's kind of the underbelly of our history. So Dr. Heidelberg, thank you for agreeing to do that. And congratulations to all the faculty members who responded to the call for proposals this year. As you know, the Douglas R. Moore Award applicants are interviewed and selected by a committee of past award recipients. And I want to thank this year's selection committee and members, as well as the committee chair, Dr. David Charlin. So that concludes our event. Thank you for coming. Drive home safely and take care.